So today we're going to do a complete service on a 2016 DF90A, a 4-stroke Suzuki. We'll change the oil, the lower unit oil. We'll go ahead and put a whole water pump kit in it, lube it up, clean the power head, and do everything. The key to longevity in an outboard is routine service using good quality lubricants and parts. One thing I definitely recommend, since an outboard motor is so expensive, is to use top quality lubricants and oil. So I only use the Suzuki branded oil, Suzuki branded gear oil, oil filters, and for the water pump kit I buy only genuine Suzuki parts. A lot of people will just replace the impeller, but this stainless housing in the kit is just as important for wear as the impeller is. Having a fantail boat is great for trawling for shrimp and access for fishing and all, but when it comes to routine maintenance around the motor, it makes it a pain. So I'll probably bump my head a few times and do some cursing in this video, but just bear with me. So first thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and pull the cover off. Once I got the cover off, I'm gonna go ahead and crack the oil field spout a little bit so the oil will drain better, so it's not airlocked in the motor. So the oil plug is an 8mm Allen wrench. You can see the dirt and all coming out of there already. So once we pull that 8mm Allen wrench with the top vented, we should get a good drain. That's what kind of mess we're gonna make here. Whoop. Didn't expect it to go that far. So we'll go ahead and let this drain down, and I'll keep an eye on it so I don't make much more of a mess. So here's one of the things I like the least about the Suzuki motor. They got the oil filter mounted down in here in a vertical position. So there's really no way to pull this oil filter without making a mess down in here. So what I like to do is I like to stuff some paper toweling down in there to try to absorb some of the residue you know that's going to come out. Just get a preemptive amount in there, and then I've already loosened this one, so I'll just unscrew it real quick, and then as soon as I can I'll pull it out. Then I can take these paper towels and clean up the mess as much as possible. So you can see it leaves a little bit of oil residue down in there. When we're done today, we're going to degrease this motor, so that'll be our remedy for it. All right, the next thing we're going to do is going to take these genuine Suzuki parts, we'll put a little bit of film of oil on this gasket seal to where we get a good seal. Just go right down in there, tighten her up as good as we can by hand. Oil filter wrench, give it about 3/4 more of a turn. There we go, beautiful. And I'll take that new oil drain seal out. So the next thing we'll do, we'll take this new seal and put it on our 8mm bolt and go ahead and close the drain back up. Torque it down and wipe off all the old oil. We get a real good clean funnel. And this motor holds 4.3 quarts. You want your outboard to last, use good top quality lubricants. Okay, that's showing right at full, but I'm sure once we start it, it'll go down some. All right, that covers our oil change till we run the motor and fill the oil filter and everything. And then we'll get a final level on it. Okay, the next thing we'll do is we'll go ahead and pull the prop off. We're going to pull the lower unit, so this will reduce some of the weight of pulling the whole thing. Plus, we'll be able to check for any line or anything that's behind it. We'll start out by straightening out our carter key. We got our carter pin out. This is the part where I bump my head underneath the boat like I was saying. So we take our lock nut off, our retaining washer and our thrust washer. should slide right off. I constantly take this off and lube behind it and check for string, so it looks like we're in good shape today. I don't see any fishing line behind here. Shaft looks in good shape, and we'll re-grease all this when we go to put it back. We'll pull these lower unit drain plug screws. Got the top one. That's what I wanted to see, nice and clear oil. No water in it at all. That's an excellent sign. And we'll let this drain till it's totally empty. And then the lower unit's held on by 5 14mm bolts, 2 on each side and 1 up underneath here. I got to get a socket, and as we lower it down, we'll pull our water pump pressure hose off the front of this little nipple here. Either that's super fine threads or the world's longest bolt. A lot of corrosion on that bolt. I'll have to make sure I clean them threads real good before I go back with that one. Ouch! That's what I'm talking about. Let me see if I can pull this off here. It's coming. Hopefully it don't tear the hose. We'll go ahead and loosen this last bolt a little bit, not all the way, and we'll see if this lower unit will want to come off. Oh, look at that, man! That's one example of where flushing a motor regularly really helps. All right, there we go, baby. That's what I wanted. Get this bad boy out. All right, the water pump housing here is all 12mm. Barely torqued too. They don't have much torque on them at all. They look pretty good. We got a little bit of salt around there I'm going to clean up. This one looks pretty good. Very clean inside this lower unit housing. Got water in it. Must be pumping. There we go. Now we're coming out. Oh, we want to lift the housing off first and see. All right, so the impeller has a counterclockwise twist to it. See what I was talking about? Wear inside this stainless housing, you just never know. There's my impeller off. Here's the key. You don't want to lose that key. So go ahead and remove this plate. Once again, you can see a lot of wear on the plate. So this is what I was talking about, why I like to get a whole kit. If you take a look, you can see a lot of wear on that plate. The impeller's not too hard, not too bad, but it does have some wear also. So we'll go ahead and take our plate off. All of our seal area looks good, no corrosion. A little bit of corrosion there, not bad. All right. Knock out that old stainless housing. See how it came out, and it's got its gasket with it. And I'll take and I'll dry and clean the inside of all this real good. I'll go ahead and open this bag, make sure I don't cut through any vital components. All right, first thing we'll do is we'll lay our new gasket down. Everything's clean in here, clean as can be. One good thing, they only go one direction and they got dowel pins to make sure. Our new plate's the same way, unidirectional. Goes on there beautifully. I'm gonna take a little bit of engine assembly grease, put it in that keyway hole, and where the shaft rides around here. I'm sorry, where the impeller rides on the shaft. Take my new impeller and my new keyway. I'll slide my new impeller down over the top of the key now. Right flush against the plate. Now the old impeller had a counterclockwise turn to the blades. So what I'll do is I'll take this hat, I'll put it on, and I'll rotate it counterclockwise as I do. So in order to make sure that gasket sticks right, I'll take and I'll put a little bit of engine assembly lube down in the grooves where the gasket rides. I'll take my new housing gasket, place it in the assembly. So as you can see, I'm fitting the gasket all the way around, all the way into all the areas where it rides, with a little bit of grease. And I'm going to take and put a little bit on the exterior of the housing to where it'll slide right down in without disrupting that gasket at all. And you can see there's a keyway on here that lines up into the pump. So we got that. Beautiful. And my key goes right over here. So that went in beautifully. You got your gasket flush all the way around, flush up at the top. Here's your water intake section. And I'll put a little bit of lube on the end of these blades so I can get them to twist and ride in that housing. Take it, we'll go down over the top here. And like I said, we want these to be counterclockwise into the housing. Beautiful. That went in so good it's scary. Alright, what I want to do also is put a tiny bit of grease on the thread of these bolts, more like along the lines of the anti-seize. Thing's slippery now, boy. Then I'll go ahead and torque my housing down. Now this housing has brass inserts to stop the bolt so you don't over torque it, and it doesn't take much, maybe 5 to 10 foot-pounds. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little scratch awl and I'm going to clean the salt corrosion out around this one alignment pin. And I hit it with a little stainless brush. I'll put a little dab of grease on there, hopefully prevent it from corroding in the future. I'll put a little tab of engine assembly grease on the shift controller here, not a bunch, and I'll put some on the splines of the main shaft. You don't want to put a ton, and you don't want to put it on the top where it'll hydraulic into the bottom of the motor, but you want a little bit of assembly grease so where it'll stay good for the next time you want to pull it down. One more spot, 2 more spots. I'll put a little bit around this little tube so the water pickup tube will slide in good. And I'll put a tiny bit on this water pressure tube so I can get that hose back on using the original tie wrap that's on it. All right, that was pretty darn easy. Well, the only thing left to do is to try to stab this bad boy back in. Should have everything lined up perfectly. We didn't disturb any gear shifting or anything the whole time we had it out. In theory, she should just line right back up. Oh, that's scary right there. I felt like it went too easy. I'll prep all these bolts with a little bit of assembly lube, just like the water pump ones. And when I get these other 4 in, I'll pull that one back out and put some on it. And this is just cheap insurance for seizure in the housing later. You don't want to put so much grease on the hydraulic in the housing and crack it. Just enough to lube her up a little bit. Okay, before I put a final torque on them, I'm going to make sure I get my little water line in on its spigot right there. Beautiful. Water line's in. All right. Okay, to fill the lower unit, I got a pump and hose set up that you just screw into the lower unit, and then we'll pump until we get liquid coming out the top. There we go. All right, well, we're at the top. I'm gonna give it a minute to settle. That's I would say that's full. So once you screw this top plug in, it should get a vacuum on it and prevent it from leaking out the bottom a bunch as you try to get your bottom plug in. All right, new lower unit plugs with new gaskets. I'll put a good torque on them. Beautiful. Clean this thrust washer real good. And then we'll want to put a good waterproof grease on this shaft and on this thrust washer. And then while we're greasing, we'll hit this Zerk fitting down here on the side of the motor. It greases the main pivot shaft. When we get up in the boat, we'll do the tilt shaft. We'll put some good grease on the back of this thrust washer in there on those splines. Get some onto the threading there. See, by taking the prop off, I was able to inspect for lines all around the back of it, and then also not have all this extra weight on here when I'm messing with the engine. Do the same thing here. We'll look at our little cup bearing. A washer. A castle nut. Some of that old grease. So these thrust washers are what hold all the tension on this prop, so you really don't need to torque the snot out of it. Let me see if I can do another. Okay, that takes me to another lined up hole. All right, Carter keys lined up in the hole. Then my tabs over. You want one to come all the way down around the prop shaft, and then one sunk down in the castellated nut hole. So that's a proper set on the Carter key. Props on. All right, flushing water's on. Only one thing left to do. Get in this bad boy and fire up. She fired right up. Got good water coming out the tail with the new pump. Water pump showing a good 4 to 5 psi at idle. That's pretty darn good. See if she goes in gear. Well, we got forward. Let the prop quit spinning. Got reverse. Man, only thing left to do now is to wash the power head after I run the motor a minute. I'm going to take a mild soap solution, clean all the dirt and all off this motor, but we want to stay away from this intake. So this will keep the motor clean, keep the electronics cooler, and just overall good maintenance. Especially over here where the oil filter is done. You want to do this last step on a nice sunny day where the motor's got time to drain out and air out. So motor's nice and clean now. Oil change, lower unit oil change, water pump changed. Everything's lubed up. What we'll do is we'll let the sun dry this off all the rest of the day. We'll put the bonnet on it, and then tomorrow morning we'll fire it up and let it run till the motor's warm to make sure all the electronics and everything are dried out. So the key to lifetime of a motor is to keep it clean, service it with good lubricants and factory parts, and you take care of it and she'll take care of you. Well, after I run it, I checked the oil. This thing takes 4.3 quarts or 4.2 quarts, and I topped it off. So as you can see, it's right at the line now. We let the motor dry out in the sun for a day, got the bonnet back on. We're now ready to run another 3 years. 300 hours on the recommended Suzuki service. Until the next video, get out there and go fishing.